Welcome to the Low Country Revolutionaries, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of Charleston, South Carolina's vibrant entrepreneurial scene. I'm your host, Bill Bellott, founder of Veritas Exoscience, and each week we're spotlighting the boldest innovators from the Chucktown startup community. These are the visionaries pouring their heart and soul into the businesses that are transferring Charleston into a global hub of creativity and American ingenuity. Get ready for raw, real conversations with the trailblazers shaping our city's future. Let's dive in. I would like to welcome Roberta Moore. Roberta has a background that bridges the boardroom as well as the therapy room. She brings a unique blend of business acumen and emotional depth to her work as an executive coach, a licensed marriage counselor, and a family therapist. Welcome, Roberta. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Bill, and I'm really excited to be here with you.
Oh,
Thank
I'm excited
you for having
too.
me as your guest.
Yeah. I mean, I read a very short portion of your bio. You've got a lot of things going on. 18 years in corporate and public accounting and banking. I'm going to ask you what does EQ means in a few minutes, but you've worked in a lot of different environments. How did you go from banking and accounting into license, marriage counseling and family therapy and executive coaching? How did all that work out?
Okay, well, I always love it when people ask me that question because I think some people, to some people, they don't. It sounds strange because it's right brain and left brain, but I'm able to do both. So I started out in accounting because my father was a CPA and a CFO.
Nice.
And so for a privately held company, and I always looked up to him in that way.
Yeah.
And one of the things I did in undergrad was spend a year studying in France. And so I was able to speak French very well and went to grad school at a school called Thunderbird, which is now has been morphed into University of Arizona or Arizona State University.
Okay.
And when I graduated, my first job was as an international auditor. So I used to work for Monsanto Company and travel in different places in Europe.
Right.
And then I morphed into public accounting with a specialty in tax. And here's where the Charleston, well, let's say the South piece, which led to Charleston, can come into play, because that was very pivotal in my career. When I met my husband-to-be, when we were both living in St. Louis, we got married, and on the honeymoon, I met an interesting woman it was like a winery tour in San Francisco, and She lived in Columbia, South Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
And she wanted to hire my husband.
Oh.
So we went from St. Louis to Columbia, and I didn't know what to do with my career because at the time, I only met a couple women who were CPAs in public accounting firms.
Right.
And the bank that I worked for after that I was doing asset-based lending. And at the time, there was no asset-based lending in this area. Now there is, of course, but back then there wasn't. So my husband said, why don't you just go back to school? Because you talk about psychology all the time and you're so interested in it. So I went to Converse, got a degree in marriage and family therapy, opened a marriage and family therapy practice. And along the way, because most of my clients were professionals, Bill, if they came in saying they had a communications issue with a spouse or a child, and one client was a banker who said this, I will never forget it. When I started asking questions, then I'd find out, he's having communication issues at work with his direct reports too.
Right. Yeah, it's usually not just in one place, right?
And I missed my business brain, and I thought, I want to find a way to bring psychology or therapy into the corporate world, but you can't, right? You have to do this in an ethical way.
Right.
And emotional intelligence, getting certified in EQ was the way I figured out how to do it, because that's totally ethical.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. It's like, I remember when I used to work for NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. And so we had some training around emotional intelligence, and it was very much like what you're talking about, communication. How do you communicate, not just how you prefer, but in a way that's effective to the person hearing it? And that was kind of like, whoa, I never thought about it that way, right?
Yes. And yes, that's true. And another big piece of it that I'm very passionate about is how to help people become non reactive,
Mm,
taking the emotional trigger out of the equation. Because when we're in an intense conversation and maybe have a different opinion,
right.
we might feel like we're butting heads with the other person. You don't want to lead from that because you might blurt out something that you can't take back, that you regret later. So, what I'm very passionate about is helping people to learn how to take that pause,
Yeah.
how to take the deep breath, how to think before you speak.
That's super important because sometimes you can just react versus listen, and it's really easy to get into that mode, just reacting to things you hear versus actually thinking for a second, taking a pause to say, okay, that kind of ticks me off, but how do I want to respond to that?
And you brought up one of the 16 skills in the model I use, which is empathy, Bill. So I use a model that's called the EQI
Okay.
2.0. It was developed by two clinical psychologists, Dr. Reuven Bar-On and Dr. Stephen Stein. Dr. Stephen Stein is an entrepreneur in Canada. Dr. Bar-On was only in the clinical research field, and
Oh, cool.
they combined forces to produce this. I chose this model because it's highly scientific and very reliable.
Right.
And it's got more bulk to it because there are 16 different skills that anybody at any time can learn if they roll up their sleeves and do the homework to build the skills. And so empathy is the skill of curiosity.
Mm,
It's the skill of listening.
mm.
It's what you mentioned previously about adapting how you talk so that it has the best chance of landing well in the other person's perspective.
Right, right. Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you're in business, it's about getting the job done. And so, the other thing, I've found, maybe more about this than I do. It's like sometimes your ego gets in the way. And
Oh, yes, yes. That's very human, isn't it?
yes.
The other thing we call the ego is the amygdala.
Oh,
And so I
okay.
like to tell my clients that there's a part of our brain that's the fight, flight, or freeze part that helped us survive in the cave people days. It served us well. And today it thinks it's helping us by keeping us safe. But
Right,
like the ego sometimes can go either direction. It whispers negative thoughts that are
right,
limiting beliefs,
right.
and
Yeah,
we can get caught up in those.
yeah, and I imagine your business is very booming right now because there's a lot of change going on. I have a lot of
Yes.
friends because I was a former federal employee. I have a lot of friends in the federal space that are very nervous because there are a lot of changes going on. Some are excited, some are completely scared. It just depends
Yes.
on where you are, and so I imagine there's a lot of conversations you're having with people around this, right?
There are, and I have clients too that work in universities. Some
Mm,
work with in labs. They're scientists
right.
and they rely on the grants. And some of them stay more calm than others. And you are absolutely correct. So the skills of flexibility and optimism come into play here. Bill, optimism being
Mm,
your ability to imagine a bright future, no matter what's going on in this moment right now. And flexibility is very closely related to being resilient.
oh,
So
okay.
I use that a lot during COVID, during that point in time with people, and it would sound like this. How can I imagine that whatever's going on right now, which might appear to me to be negative if I'm scared, how can I imagine myself on the other side of this in a
Ah.
better place? I'm going to grow and I'm going to be a better version of me because I've gone through this challenging time.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, I was thinking of asking you about that because I've worked with a lot of folks in the military and stuff, and especially like some of the folks in the army, and they have an expression, it's their expression, it's kind of funny, and they say embrace the suck. which is,
Yes, I know that from
you
working
know
with
that one,
them.
right? So, but it, to me, in my mind, and maybe this is a misinterpretation, it's really about what exactly you said. It's about knowing that, okay, I'm walking through the swamp, but there's another side to the swamp. And once I'm done, it's, I'm through it. So I just have to get to the other side and be able to be optimistic enough that you're going to get to the other side. That's the way I've always kind of interpreted it.
Yes, I love that. I've done adjunct work for the VA when I was living in St. Louis, Missouri, before I moved here. And I heard that phrase quite a bit. And so I like to tell people, knowing that the now is temporary,
Right.
and we have more control than that amygdala or negative ego tries to tell us that we have. Because the control we have, maybe we don't control, like, if there's a COVID or the
Sure.
cutbacks that you're talking about, but we can control how we respond. And we're more powerful and empowered when we choose how to respond instead of just impulsively react.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, sometimes I tell, friends of mine, sometimes this is helpful, sometimes it's not. But, I often tell friends of mine, it's like, where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And for some people, it's like, oh my God, I never thought about that. And it's like, oh, this is great. And some people's like, oh no, it's chaos. Now I'm scared. So
Yes.
you have to be careful. You have to have your, like you're saying earlier, your emotional intelligence to know who you can tell that to.
Yes, and because some people will be upset by that.
Right.
However, if you can just keep reframing whatever's going on in the moment to continue to have momentum. Momentum is so important to keep going, as you probably well know, to get through any hurdle.
Right. Yeah. And, that's so true. It's like, and I think, to kind of put it in my kind of perspective with the folks I've talked to in this podcast, I think, a lot of small businesses, that's really what they're trying to generate initially is momentum. You've got all this inertia of, hey, I'm just starting out, nothing's moving, nothing's happening, money's going out the door, but money's not coming in, all of those things. And you're like, okay, I need to build some momentum. How do I do that? And, that's happening in your mind too, not just, on your books. So
Yes.
how do you work with businesses and stuff that are kind of going through that? Do you help them kind of think through those things?
Well, it's all about being able to focus, correct?
Okay.
If you pick, like, no more than 3 things. So for instance, when I start working with somebody, whether it's a corporation or an individual within a corporation, because I do both, I work with teams as well as individuals.
Right.
The first thing we do is to take the EQI 2.0 assessment. It's an online assessment. There's 133 different questions. And then we find out what are the top skills, and then what are the skills that need to be developed. And this tool, it's very important to be in balance. That's more important than scoring high.
Okay.
Yes.
That's different than the Myers-Briggs and a lot of the others, because they're looking for strengths. This is the first time I've heard about you're looking for one where you're more in balance. That's really cool.
I'm glad you got excited about that, because again, this is skill-based. Myers-Briggs, which I also use, and DISC, which I'm also certified
done DISC
in.
and Myers-Briggs.
Those are personality indicators. And the research around personality, Bill, says that the bandwidth is narrow about how much we can change our personality from birth to death.
Right.
But with skill-based, like EQ is a skill through the research, it's a wide band. We can dramatically change our EQ.
Wow.
And it can go up and down over the trajectory of our lifetime and can be very affected by circumstances. Like if somebody gets a promotion, they may view themselves differently than somebody who's just been let go and didn't want to be let go.
Right.
So just an example of the balance. Even though this tool is gender neutral and culture neutral, something that I find in my work, I've run about more than 800 of these.
Right.
Women will tend to score higher in empathy, and this was true of me. High in empathy, low in assertiveness. Not all women, but for the most part. And then for males, it tends to be flipped in my experience. Men will be scoring higher in assertiveness and lower in empathy.
Right.
And if you just take, if you take that one, we start with men, assertiveness is not being aggressive.
Right.
But if you can't be curious, if you're forging ahead because you have the wherewithal to push something forward, but you don't have the curiosity and the listening skills, if you're in a negotiation, you're not going to have the best outcome if you're not balanced in those two skills.
Very true. Very true. And I'm not in your profession, but I have observed exactly what you've said. And,
oh, good.
And I could tell you, I've seen this, especially around like negotiations for a job and salary. It exactly mirrors exactly what you said. That's why women tend to have a harder time in the negotiation portion of it, but they can do better in other parts of the job. And it's about that personality type thing. And it's also about, at least this is, again, my naive observations. It's about what they value. So typically women, my observations, value relationships. Men typically value outcome or something around that. And because of those value systems, they make trade-offs based on that. And that's been, just having worked a lot of times, I've seen this kind of go on. And I can't say, how do you use this EQ tool to kind of help someone who's got some natural tendencies toward these areas?
Well, I have cognitive behavioral exercises. Certainly that's why I wrote my book.
Yeah.
Because in the book, there are all the stories or the case studies in there are true. I changed the gender sometimes. I change the occupation sometimes to protect the person's story. But I show how you can transform somebody by them doing the cognitive behavioral exercises. So for empathy, for instance, in the book, I've got some listening exercises. One of the exercises might be you ask somebody you feel safe with, how do I do as a listener? Do you feel seen, heard, and understood by me when you're in a conversation with me, or do you feel otherwise?
Right.
So, doing exercises such as that helps to build the skills. And, it takes time to build the skills. It takes, in my experience, at least 6 months, sometimes a year, to move the needle on building and balancing the disparate skills.
Yeah, that's probably one I need to work on. I won't dig too much deeper in that, but that's one I need to work on. But let me ask you. So why? I know this is sort of part of your bio, but I want to hear a little bit more. So why Charleston? Why'd you come here from? I know you guys moved to Columbia and stuff for a little while, but why Charleston? How'd you get to here? And why is this a good place for you guys?
Well, when we were in Columbia, we started vacationing in Charleston.
Oh, nice.
We moved. I had to keep COVID was horrible, and yet the silver lining was that my work became more virtual, and people became more comfortable with that. But prior to that, I would have to rebuild every time we moved for my husband's career.
Yeah.
So we vacationed in Charleston. We went then to Flat Rock, North Carolina, which is near Asheville, because my husband had a job in Greenville, but his parents had retired to that area and we wanted to be closer to them.
Right.
But we would continue to vacation twice a year in Charleston. I would say that went on for 15 years, maybe 20 years. And we very much wanted to be here because my husband and I both love the beach. We like the people. We like the climate. If you've lived here for a while, you know that things have changed here dramatically from the growth to the area over that amount of time. And really it was the ability to start to work virtually when that shift happened during COVID, that I was like, okay, let's pull the plug and let's just go.
Right.
I've only been here 10 months.
Okay, so I'm been here just a little longer. We got here in 2021. I was, my family's part of the growth boom. I'll say that, and we did exactly the same thing when we all went virtual. It's like, why are we staying here? We were up in the DMV, as it's called, Washington D.C. area, metro area, DMV,
Uh-huh.
and we're like, we don't have to be here. We don't have to, and there were better opportunities for school and other things and family life down here. So yes, we're right there with you on that.
I have to tell you, every day, my husband and I on our morning walks, we're like, we can't believe we finally get to be here because it's so wonderful. One of the things, talking about optimism, one of the 16 EQ skills, the people that I meet when I'm out networking, I've never met such optimistic, excited people. And I think it's because everybody's so happy to live here.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, I'm starting my own business. I just started in March after working in, government and nonprofit sector for a long time. And what you need, at least this is what I need, being around optimistic people helps you be optimistic too. And
Yes.
so I
Yes.
think, that's one of the great things about, Charleston is if you want to start and grow something, you're going to be around optimistic, happy people. That's awesome, right?
Yes, of course it is.
So, final question. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs out there? They're just getting going.
So anybody can work on their EQ. And from the research that Dr. Stein has done, there are 3 of the skills that are important. I've written about this in a couple different books, but I remember the 3 skills as ACE, assertiveness, confidence, and empathy. To have those 3 in balance, those are like the power skills. The people in his study of like 76 CEOs that were the most profitable, they had those 3 skills in balance. So work on your assertiveness, which can also mean to take initiative to get that momentum. That's the other part of assertiveness. Work on your confidence, being having high self-regard so that you can put yourself out there and make yourself visible. Right. Because as entrepreneurs, we have to do that.
Right.
Otherwise people don't know we're here, right?
Yeah.
And then the empathy piece, because being a very good listener, being curious about other people is going to help you build those interpersonal relationships. And I know otherwise you wouldn't be doing this podcast with me, how important relationships are and networking is.
Absolutely. Yeah, your network, I would argue also your reputation in your network, it's better than gold in the bank any day of the week. And, just personally, I've made choices throughout my career that those things get protected over, almost anything else. Because once you lose it, you can almost never get it back,
Yes. A couple of things that I did before moving here, because when we found the house and made up our mind to move, we got everything together and moved in 8 weeks. So it was like cleaning up the house and getting all that stuff. It was really, really fast. And I joined ACG here because I was a member of ACG, which is the Association for Corporate Growth in St. Louis. Okay. And it had been important to me. And here we have a new chapter in Charleston. This September, it'll be 2 years old. So I joined that right away. And I joined an organization that was new to me, but they had a chapter here. It's called the Dames. Mm-hmm. And it's an international group too. That's been very helpful. And then I joined Daniel Island Rotary and the Harbor Club. So
yeah, the Harbor Club's super. I've been there. I don't get to Daniel Island. I'm a bit out there in the Somerville area, but yes, okay. Daniel Island's wonderful from what I hear.
Yes, and so is Somerville.
Yes. So
but joining things.
Yeah. And
Getting to meet people and know people is very important.
yeah, I think you're right about that. And that's been, for me, and I imagine others, it's been a bit of a struggle. It's like coming out of the whole COVID hide in your house thing. It's like,
Yes.
and just being used to, like, I've worked virtual for years now. Just being used to working virtual, it's like getting back to more in person stuff. It's been a transition, I think, for a lot of folks.
It's hard. A lot of my clients are in cybersecurity or technology,
Right.
so they will describe themselves as introverted. And now that there's this higher push to come back to the office, and some companies are changing those remote full-time positions to now you're in the office like 3 days a week. It's really hard for them.
Right. Right. Yes. I know some folks that are struggling with that myself, and it is a big change for them. There's pluses and minuses with everything, but it is like you say, it's the new reality. And I think, I'm very happy there are folks like yourself that are around that can help us uh, get through this, because just having someone like you to talk to and kind of work out how to do this, learn. I love these tools you have, and I love that it's like, it's got a strong science basis on it, and something that anybody can use. I love that. And so I think, I would hope others will use your services. I don't want to flood you and, get you overwhelmed, but, I hope others will use your services, and because that'll make all of us better here in the Charleston area. And we definitely want that to happen.
Well, it's a great area, and I'm excited to be a part of my new community.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today, Roberta, and I hope we talk again soon in the future.
Thank you, Bill, for hosting me, and I hope we talk again soon too.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Low Country Revolutionaries. Thanks for joining us as we celebrate the fearless entrepreneurs making wave in Charleston's Chucktown Startups community. I'm Bill Ballott, and it's been an honor to share these inspiring stories with you. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs a spark of low country innovation. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.